Have you ever apologized for something that was never your fault, just to keep the peace? If you have, then you already know a kind of pain most people never have to understand. And today we're going to talk about a moment that changes everything for someone who has lived through narcissistic abuse. The moment you reject them. Not the moment they leave you, the moment you finally say no. Because here's the truth almost nobody tells you. What happens after that moment reveals more about who you are than anything that came before it. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand something about yourself that you may have never had words for. If you're on your own journey of healing right now, if these words feel like they were written just for you, this space was made for people exactly like you. Consider staying close by subscribing, because what we talk about here might just be the thing you needed to hear today. Let's start at the beginning. Not the beginning of the relationship, the beginning of you disappearing. It probably didn't happen all at once. It happened in small moments. A comment about how sensitive you were. A joke that cut a little too deep, followed by, "Can't you take a joke?" A memory of an argument that you were absolutely certain happened one way, until they looked you dead in the eyes and told you it happened completely differently. And you believed them. Not because you were foolish, because you loved them. And love, when it's twisted the right way, can make you doubt your own memory, your own eyes, your own mind. This is the quiet horror of gaslighting. It doesn't scream at you, it whispers. It tells you, again and again in 100 small ways, that your reality is wrong, and their reality is the only one that matters. And slowly, without you even noticing it happening, you stop trusting yourself. You start asking permission, even in your own head, to feel what you feel. But here's what most people never realize. That confusion you felt wasn't a flaw in you. It was the intended result of a pattern. You were not losing your mind. Someone was very carefully rearranging it. Think about the imagery for a second. Imagine standing in a room where the furniture keeps moving when you're not looking. You touch the wall to steady yourself, and even the wall feels like it shifted an inch to the left. That is what living with a narcissist can feel like on the inside. Constant, quiet, disorienting change, dressed up as normal life. And you adapted to it, because humans are built to adapt to survive. You became smaller so the room would stop shifting so violently. You became quieter so the storm would pass faster. You became an expert at reading a face before it even finished forming an expression. That skill you built, reading danger before it arrives, sensing tension in a room before anyone speaks, that is not weakness. That is a kind of intelligence forged in fire. And it is the same intelligence that is about to save you. Let's talk about why leaving is so hard, because this is where so much shame lives, and shame deserves to be replaced with understanding. You were not just attached to a person. You were attached to a cycle of intensity, followed by cold distance, followed by the return of warmth so overwhelming it felt like coming up for air after being underwater. Psychologists call this trauma bonding, but you don't need the clinical name to know the feeling. You know the way your whole body would light up the moment they were kind again, after days of feeling like you were disappearing. You know the relief of being forgiven for things you never actually did wrong. That relief is not weakness. It is your nervous system doing exactly what nervous systems are built to do, seeking safety wherever it can find even a flicker of it. This is where everything starts to change, though, because once you understand the cycle, you can finally see it instead of just feeling it. The idealizing phase, the devaluing phase, the discard or the withdrawal that makes you scramble to fix something you didn't break. And then, just when you start to build a little distance, a little strength, a little clarity, they come back, softer, sweeter, more attentive than they've been in months. And it feels like proof that you were wrong to doubt them. It feels like the person you fell for in the very beginning has finally returned. But here's the part that changes everything. That person you fell for in the beginning may never have fully existed at all, not in the way you believed. What you saw in those early days was often a performance, carefully tuned to hook exactly the kind of person you are. Your warmth, your loyalty, your capacity to love deeply and forgive easily. These were not accidents they overlooked. These were the very things they were drawn to, because these are the things that make a person easy to keep. That is one of the most painful truths in all of this, and it deserves to be said gently, because it is a kind of grief nobody prepares you for. You are not just grieving the relationship, you are grieving the person you thought they were. You are mourning someone who, in many ways, never truly existed. And grief for a person who never existed is a strange, lonely kind of grief, because there is no funeral for it, no ritual, no casseroles left on your doorstep. Just you, quietly learning to let go of a version of someone that was, in the end, mostly a mirror reflecting back exactly what you needed to see. The truth goes much deeper than that, though, because underneath the grief is something else. Anger. And anger, when it finally arrives after all that confusion, is not a step backward. It is one of the most important steps forward you will ever take. Anger means you have stopped blaming yourself long enough to see clearly who was actually responsible. Anger means the fog is lifting. It is uncomfortable, and it can feel unfamiliar if you spent years being the peacekeeper, the calm one, the one who never raised her voice. But anger, in its healthy form, is not the opposite of healing. It is often the doorway to it. Now let's talk about the moment this whole video is named after. The moment you reject them. Maybe you didn't call it rejection at the time. Maybe you just called it setting a boundary, or going no contact, or simply saying, quietly but firmly, "I'm done." But to someone whose entire sense of self depends on control, on admiration, on being the center of every room they walk into, your rejection is not a small thing. It is an earthquake. And this next part is something almost no one talks about. What happens after you reject a narcissist often reveals their true nature faster and more completely than anything that happened during the entire relationship. Some people expect tears, groveling, a desperate apology tour. And sometimes, in the beginning, you get exactly that. A flood of messages, promises to change, reminders of the good days, carefully selected and replayed like a highlight reel designed to make you forget everything else. This is what's often called hoovering, an attempt to suck you back into the cycle before you can build enough distance to see clearly. But if that doesn't work, if you hold your ground, something else tends to emerge, and it can be jarring, even frightening in how quickly it appears. The warmth disappears. The mask, the one that was so carefully maintained for so long, starts to slip. You might see anger you never knew they were capable of. You might hear things said about you, to mutual friends, to family, even to strangers, that twist the story so completely you barely recognize yourself in it. You become, in their retelling, the villain of a story where you were actually the one who survived. This is where everything starts to change. And this time it changes in your favor. Because this reaction, this reveal, is not proof that you did something wrong. It is proof of exactly what you were dealing with all along. A person capable of that kind of image, of that kind of cruelty in response to simply being told no, was never capable of the deep, stable, respectful love you deserved in the first place. Their reaction to your rejection is not a reflection of your worth. It is a mirror held up to their own emptiness. Here's the part that changes everything, though. The moment they reveal that emptiness is often the exact moment your healing accelerates, because it becomes almost impossible to keep romanticizing someone who is showing you, in real time, exactly who they are. Let's pause here for a moment, because if you are in the middle of this right now, if you rejected someone recently and you are watching the fallout unfold in real time, I want you to hear this clearly. Whatever they are saying about you, however they are twisting the story, however loudly they are performing their pain for an audience, none of it changes the truth of what happened to you behind closed doors. None of it erases what you survived. Their noise is not evidence, it is a symptom. And if you're finding even a small piece of clarity in these words right now, that alone is worth pausing to notice. Healing often begins in exactly these small moments of recognition. This space exists to help you find more of them. So if that's something you want more of, this is a good time to hit subscribe. Now let's talk about what actually happens inside you after that rejection. Because the external chaos is only half of the story. The other half is happening quietly, inside your own mind, and it is far more important. At first, there is often a strange kind of silence. Not peace exactly, but the absence of constant tension. And that silence can feel unbearable at first, because your nervous system got so used to chaos that calm can feel like something is wrong. This is normal. This does not mean you made a mistake. It simply means your body is recalibrating to a new normal, one where it doesn't have to stay on high alert every hour of every day. Slowly, in the weeks that follow, something remarkable begins. You start remembering things about yourself that had quietly disappeared. A laugh that used to come easily. An opinion you used to hold without needing to check if it was acceptable first. A hobby you gave up because it took time away from managing someone else's moods. These pieces don't come back all at once. Healing is not a straight line, and if your progress feels messy, uneven, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, that is not failure. That is exactly what real healing looks like. What happens next will surprise you, because this is where the story usually turns in a direction nobody expects. The same sensitivity that made you an easy target for someone who wanted to control you is the exact same sensitivity that makes you capable of extraordinary empathy, extraordinary insight, extraordinary depth. That part of you was never the problem. It was simply aimed at the wrong person for far too long, and now, slowly, you get to redirect it toward people who deserve it, toward yourself for once, toward a future that isn't shaped by someone else's need for control. Let's talk honestly about the guilt too, because guilt tends to linger long after the relationship ends. You might feel guilty for leaving, guilty for the anger you feel now, guilty for wishing on your hardest days that they would just disappear so you could stop thinking about them entirely. None of that guilt means you are a bad person. It means you are a person who was taught, over a long period of time, to feel responsible for someone else's emotions, someone else's behavior, someone else's choices. That responsibility was never yours to carry. It was placed on you, piece by piece, until it felt like it belonged there. It doesn't belong there. It never did. This is where the real turning point happens, quietly, without fanfare, usually on an ordinary day that doesn't feel significant until much later when you look back on it. It's the day you catch yourself about to apologize for something that isn't your fault, and instead, you stop. You just stop. And in that pause, you realize you have a choice now that you didn't fully believe you had before. That pause is everything. That pause is years of pain turning into wisdom right in front of you. From here, the path forward looks different for everyone, but certain things tend to be true across the board. You start setting boundaries not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You start noticing red flags earlier, not because you've become cynical, but because you've become wise. You start trusting your own perception again, slowly, the way you'd trust a friend who lied to you once but has been honest ever since. It takes time. It takes patience with yourself, but it happens. And here's something important to hold on to through all of it. Your future is not required to look anything like your past. It is not a continuation of what happened to you. It is a new chapter, one you get to write with your own hand, on your own terms, at your own pace. You survived something that was designed, whether consciously or not, to make you smaller, quieter, and more compliant. And you are still here, still feeling, still capable of love, of trust, of joy, even after everything that tried to convince you those things were dangerous. That, in itself, is proof of a strength that no one can take from you now, because you already proved you have it. If any part of this has felt like it was speaking directly to your own story, know that you are far from alone in it. So many people watching this right now have walked a version of the same road, and healing tends to feel less lonely when it's shared. If you want to keep learning, keep healing, and keep finding your way back to yourself, staying part of this space is a simple way to do that. So consider subscribing and coming back for what's next. Let's close with this. Rejecting a narcissist is rarely the end of the story people expect. It doesn't always bring immediate peace. Sometimes it brings chaos, distortion, and a flood of noise designed to make you question yourself all over again. But underneath that noise, something quiet and powerful is happening. You are becoming someone who trusts herself again, someone who no longer needs someone else's approval to know her own worth, someone who survived the storm and is now, finally, learning how to stand in stillness without fear. They didn't destroy you. They revealed you. They revealed a strength you didn't know you had, a clarity you didn't know you needed, and a version of yourself that no amount of gaslighting, manipulation, or cruelty could ever fully erase. So if you're standing at that moment right now, right after the rejection, right in the middle of the chaos that followed, hold on to this one truth and let it carry you forward. You did not lose them. You found yourself. And that will always be the greater victory.